Whispers of the Force, Chapter 2, Port Priority. Hey, slow down and show me some identification. I'm in a hurry, and you understand I don't have time to stop. You're in a hurry, and you shouldn't stop. Lugan wasn't a fan of using the Force on the minds of the innocent. He preferred an honest solution, even if some of his methods did stretch the definition of honesty. He jumped the gate at the spaceport and hurried onward toward the dock. One of the women in line, a Twi'lek, protested him skipping the line. The port officer, still under the influence of the mind trick, wasn't about to have anyone question his orders as he threatened all others waiting in the line to speak their piece if they wanted to go through a scan. This quickly quieted the unrest as most were smuggling through this port illegally and didn't want to risk losing the credits. Lugan continues to sprint through the spaceport, passing his own ship, desperately looking to catch up to the man in Mandalorian armor. His only issue being the size of this spaceport. With his luck, he could have already passed the ship Trophim was escaping on and he wouldn't even know. Lugan stopped his mad rush down the shipport. It was time he stopped looking with his eyes and let the Force guide him. He clasped his hands, lowered his head, and closed his eyes. The noise of the spaceport slowly disappeared as his mind drifted to a dark ocean. He reached out around him, spreading his awareness in the Force, looking for a sign. Lost in his mindscape, he stood on the dark ocean, still like a frozen lake. He knelt down and placed his hand on the dark lake, making contact and creating a ripple. In this ripple, he saw it. He saw the ship. He realized this was the ship he passed. Another ripple of the surface as he pulled his hand back. This time, showing him a faded 19. He dragged his mind back to the present, unclasping his hands and spinning around. Port 21. He was close. The vision in the dark lake showed that takeoff preparation was still being done. He had time, but not much, to catch him before he left. Lugan made it just in time. The engines were starting to hum to life. It was a modified light freighter, an HWK-290. A ship that could easily blend in as something just hauling cargo to different ports, but perfect for bounty hunters and smugglers. He ran to the manual display at the vessel's port and hit the override switch. He caught it just in time, as the ship nested in the docking clamps, holding it to the ceiling, refused to let go, as metal joints and bolts screeched under the pressure of the vessel attempting to break away. From the panel, he tapped into the ship's communications. Trophim, this is Lugan. I know you hear me loud and clear, so open your rear bay and let me on board. There was some slight feedback for a second. Trophim could be overheard the communication relay at the port display. Like hell you're coming aboard my ship. You're nothing but trouble. Being associated with you will only cause more issues. Now undock my ship before I come out there and do it myself. Trophim was doing his best to remain civil, but clearly his first impression hadn't been a good one. It did likely get him excommunicated from his guild. If it's what it takes to get you face to face, I'll be waiting here for you. Lugan was absolutely sure he had done it now. If Trophim wasn't already pissed, he sure as hell was now. It was not the ideal negotiation situation, but if there was one thing he trusted, the Force always provided. The rear hatch opened with a hissing sound. As the ramp lowered, a blaster bolt shot past Lugan's ear. That's a warning shot. The next one won't miss, Jedi dog. I promise I won't keep you long, just let me board your ship and ask you a few questions. After that, you can jettison me in an escape pod anywhere you like. This didn't make Trophim any happier as he jumped down, softening his landing with his jetpack. With fire in his step and blaster raised to him, Trophim barked orders at Lugan that did nothing but test the Jedi's peacekeeping abilities. Final warning, Republic dog. Free my ship, or I'll blast you and do it myself. 3, 2, 1. A blaster hit the docking display, frying it and shorting the whole console. More shots came their way as more smugglers' guild members poured down the corridor. Damn it all! Your stupid antics let them catch up. Without further hesitation, Trophim returned fire with his blaster. But caught out in the open, he had no choice but to hunch down and use the Beskar plating to shield him the best it could. Using his arm as a buckler, he returned fire, all while catching stray bolts here and there. A few bolts nearly strong enough to almost knock him over. Then, he sensed the danger before he saw it. Sailing through the air once more to claim his life was another thermal detonator thrown his way. Trophim cursed under his breath with no hope of making it out of this one. Lugan batted bolts away while considering his best option to make it out of this conundrum. Trophim was hanging on, but the blaster fire coming their way would eventually overwhelm them. He needed to get them both on that ship and out of this spaceport in one piece. With the port console needing repairs, they would have to manually open the clamps. Lugan was confident he could pry the ship free, but with all the blaster bolts coming his way, he wouldn't have that kind of time. Trophim, We need to get to the ship and get out of here. We won't be able to hold on forever, and something tells me the Port Authority isn't going to step in, or they would have been here by now. Grunting through the force of the hits pelting his armor, he returned fire, and then Lugan saw it. He didn't need his danger sense to know what should have come next. However, he was ready this time. It wasn't about to have another redo of the smuggler's den. Before Trophin could take matters into his own hands, he reached out and pushed the detonator with the force, to return the direction it had been thrown from. Screams of panic came from the smugglers as they tried to run for cover from the explosion. The boom shook the port, sending a cloud of smoke. In the brief moment it covered them, Lugan yelled to Trophin, "I'm gonna need a second, so cover me as best as you can." Trophin stepped in front of him, forming a human wall and laying down cover fire with both blasters through the smoke. With this moment of reprieve, he closed his eyes, concentrating, reaching out in the force and feeling the metal claws holding onto the ship with a vice grip. He felt the interlocking gears and twisted them, grunting with the force. The front docking clamps had been released. Now only the rear clamps were attached. They needed to prep the ship for takeoff again. "Get on the ship and prep it. I'll hold things down here." Lugan didn't have to be told to get on the ship and leave. He quickly flew through his open rear cargo bay and headed straight for the pilot's seat. Now Lugan only hoped he wasn't going to get left behind. Lugan turned his focus back to the recovering smugglers. Discarding his robe, revealing the segmented plate armor underneath, he walked forward, closing the distance and adopting a Sarisu style. With each step, he parries, reflects, and blocks, weaving a tight formation forming a wall of will and force. He moved his saber faster and faster, creating a tighter circle to keep his guard as strong as possible. Step after step, he closed the distance between him and his attackers little by little. He was now close enough to see the panic in their eyes. No matter how much they threw at him, he wouldn't break. This wasn't Lugan's first time under a heavy blast of fire. Lugan had seen worse, but right now in front of him, he saw an opportunity. Lugan leaped over the wall of blast fire, landing behind the crates they had used for cover. Now in the middle of the fray, the smugglers had to choose their shots carefully or risk hitting one of their own. Some smugglers quickly showed they didn't care too much for their own. Using the premonition of the force, instead of trying to block every shot, Lugan did his best to let as many slip by as he could without getting hit himself. Lugan tumbled towards a Quarren, one of the few smugglers not trying to thin their numbers through friendly fire, and sprung from his roll shoulder first, ramming into the Quarren, knocking him into another standing behind him. Lugan reached out with the force, stealing the blaster from the staggered Quarren's hand. Now with a lightsaber in one hand and a blaster in another, he fired shot after shot, not all hitting his target, but the ones that did tilted the fight just so much closer in his favor. While distracted by the chaos of the battle, he suddenly heard the engines of the ship roar to life, trying to escape the clamps as they screamed from the attempts of the ship to escape. Now, he needed to get those clamps loose if he wanted to get out of here in one piece. Lost in his troubles, a large Devaronian grabbed him from behind, trapping his arms and squeezing the air from his lungs. Through the crushing force, Lugan yelled in pain. He needed to get out of this, or he was good as dead, and the council would never get the information they needed. Just then, another smuggler holstered his blaster, pulling a vibroblade from his ankle and charging him. Lugan, drawing on the force, used it to energize him, lifting both legs and kicking off the charging smuggler, knocking him clean across the floor and unconscious. The Devaronian, still holding onto Lugan, was knocked over straight into a shipping crate they were using for cover, cracking his head on the edge. With him now unconscious, Lugan was finally able to free himself from his grasp and rolled over, taking gulps of air with one hand on his now bruised chest. Without giving him too much time to recover, more men and women came after him. A female Twi'lek ran at him with a scorched plasteel patch overhead. As soon as she got close, he reignited his lightsaber and cut her in two. Now standing, Lugan didn't have time to catch his breath. More shots came and more charged him. He didn't have time to deal with all this. Lugan stretched out his arms, spread them, and pushed with the force. Cargo crates and bodies flew in all directions. Lugan ran forward to the ship's rear, reaching out with the force once more, just like the time before. He felt the interlocking gears fighting him, but he squeezed them, groaning in effort. Lugan screamed in pain. Damn it! He dropped to one knee. The shot luckily hit his plated armor, but all the same, it burned like hell. The pain was enough to bring him to one knee, but he still had to get the clamp loose. He focused again, with bolts still flying his way, reaching out again and making the final turn. There! He'd finally done it. The ship was now free and stabilized in the hangar, floating on its thrusters. The vessel drifted to the port exit. Son of a cathound. Lugan cursed himself. Trophin was taking the ship and running. A scowl crawled onto Lugan's face as he watched the ship vector out of view under the blaster bolts of the smugglers. He wasn't the only one upset about seeing the ship go. Months of chasing lead after lead, all for the council, and now look at the mess I've gotten stuck in. No information, no solid leads, no way out. The force had guided him here, but he wasn't sure it would guide him out now. Clutching his side, he stood and faced the gang of smugglers who were slowly trudging towards him. They were bruised and battered, but still had the advantage of numbers. The Devaroni who nearly squeezed the life from him stepped forward holding an electro neck gun. An Ithorian pushed through the crowd, and Lugan recognized him from the Smugglers Guild. the one who initially instigated the situation. I say we take him back alive. Would be good for the guild reputation. We could all have a say in this. Jedi Specialist Kellax might have a good ring to it. What you think? He nudged the Deveronian holding the electronet gun. The Deveronian started to look at him and grin. Let's nab the Republic scum. Hang him up somewhere people can see him so they know the Smugglers Guild isn't to be messed with. The crowd roared at the thought of parading a dead Jedi around like a trophy. The group moved past Kellax as he turned and left them to do the work. By this time, Lugan was injured and tired, heavily relying on the Force to keep himself standing. Lugan adopted another serious stance as the mob approached. I hope you know I won't make you work for it. You'll be the first group of smugglers to ever work for free. I'm honored. An overzealous smuggler broke from the group and charged. He pushed with the Force, but the pain from the blaster wound had become so unbearable he couldn't think straight enough to will the Force to do his bidding. The show of apparent fatigue put a smile on their face. They cheered once more and advanced faster on him. The distance closed rapidly until heavy plasma singed the space before him. Lugan covered his eyes as repeated turbo laser shots were fired at the smugglers, vaporizing most instantly and leaving the lucky ones scrambling to figure out what was going on. It was the HWK-290 Trophim took off in. His jaw hung in shock, wondering why he had returned, but he was thankful for it. The ship flew into the bay, spewing hot plasma at anything still moving while turning to port. The rear bay opened to reveal Trophim standing there. Lugan thought he might be happier to see him now than when he first found him. Trophim yelled out to Lugan, "Let's go, Jedi dog!" Trophim didn't wait to see Lugan board a ship. He promptly turned to return to his pilot seat. It was all the same to Lugan. He wouldn't wait for a red carpet to roll out for him. He leapt for the landing ramp that opened at the rear as the ship started to drift towards the exit once more. With the last of his energy, he used the Force to retrieve the cloak he had been wearing this whole time. Couldn't leave a gift from a friend. Now in the co-pilot seat, Lugan could finally exhale, as the night sky quickly lit up with specks of distant light. A thought arose in his head. Why'd you come back? The question hung in the air for a moment before Trophim responded. I had a feeling I needed to go back. Might not have much work for a while thanks to you. Lost all my connections on the side of the galaxy as well. I'll always need credits, and the Republic has plenty. Trophim never looked over once, only flipping switches, prepping the ship for a lightspeed jump. Lugan wasn't convinced by this response. Any smuggler with a reputation could find work with someone. Republic, Sith Empire, or even the Hutts. Someone of his skill could find work anywhere. You know, I think you came back because we made a good team back there. I think I'm growing on you. Lugan chuckled a bit at his own remark, then winced at the pain caused by the stray shot. Don't push your luck, Jedi. Strap yourself in and prepare for the jump. We'll talk credits when I know we're safe. Trophim pushed the large handle forward, causing the ship to lurch before the viewport became a blur of a million lights, stretched as thin as a needle. Lugan closed his eyes, imagining himself meditating on that dark lake. He inhaled and drifted off, waiting intently for more guidance from the Force.